When you think of Megatron, you probably imagine a merciless conqueror, hell-bent on asserting his rule throughout the galaxy. Or perhaps a remorseful, sympathetic ex-villain seeking to atone for his crimes. These are not so in every timeline. In the mirror universe of Shattered Glass, Megatron is a math teacher who predicted the war with his pattern-seeking brain module. Where normal Megatron is ruthless and sadistic, SG Megs is calm and kind, and probably a fan of Isaac Asimov. He brought the dimensionally displaced Cliffjumper in for repairs, and even took a bullet for him. Heck, in the original Shattered Glass story, he's the one who invented transformation. Now, I love the concept of Shattered Glass, but it's pretty slim pickings when it comes to toys. The only official transforming SG Megatrons are the original BotCon 2008 toy, a retool of Energon Megatron, and the 2021 toy, which is a repaint of Siege Megatron with some extra bits plugged into him. I'd always intended to make a custom SG Megatron at some point, and the letdown of the 2021 figure only spurred this need further. I'd already acquired the toy I intended to use as a base, it was just a matter of when I would do it. Then one day, I happened to be on TFW 2005 checking the news, and lo and behold, Flame Toys was releasing a repaint of their Kurokara Kuri Megatron in SG colors. This is basically what would happen if the Strike Freedom Gundam and Megatron did the Dragon Ball Fusion dance. In that moment, inspiration struck me like an oncoming train, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. Now, I am incredibly picky when it comes to my Megatrons. I skipped Siege and Earthrise because their proportions just don't look right to me, and the only reason I have a version now is because I needed a young Megatron for a future project. The first official G1 style Megatron I ever bought was Generation Select's Super Megatron, which is a super fun toy, but I still wasn't content with it as a baseline Megatron. It's more like a Megatron Plus. No, for a long time now, my main Megatron has been Mastermind Creations' Tyrantron, based on his appearance in More Than Meets the Eye. It's by no means a perfect figure, but I liked its look and its height compared to other figures, so I've been rolling with it. I first planned to make an SG Megatron out of it a few years ago, and acquired a spare one at a TFCon. However, it seems he got fed up with waiting and broke his own hip. And this would not be the last time that I would have trouble with this figure's hips. Eventually, as mentioned in the previous segment, I found out about the Kurokara Kuri one, and became inspired enough to act. I figured I could 3D print some new components, but at the time I still wasn't great with CAD. I spent some time brainstorming ideas for the design, and once I felt I had enough experience with Blender and making parts for things, I decided it was time to move on to making it. I started the formal design process in late 2023. Whenever I had a chance at work, I began sketching out what it might look like if I put the Strike Freedom's backpack on Tyrantron. And as I drew him, I kept thinking up a story to go along with it. The Gundam inspiration came on very strong at this stage, namely the Unicorn Gundam Psycho Frame and the Trans Am mode from Gundam 00. I eventually concluded that this is Megatron after coming into contact with Unicron. Unicron in this story is a guardian of order and peace, while Primus is a conqueror, hell-bent on controlling the universe. Unicron defeated Primus eons ago with the help of Megatronus Prime, who betrayed his brethren and became a knight of Unicron. In the modern age, Unicron sensed Primus's machinations at work once more, so he recruited Megatron as his new knight, equipping him with the last remnants of Megatronus Prime's power. Megatron became supercharged with Angalmois energy, able to use it to defy the laws of physics. He can hover, move super quick in space, and a psychic control over 6 cannons that he calls Leaders 1 through 6, and his Rumbler fusion cannon. In this form, Megatron and his friends protect Cybertron from Optimus, the latest warlord to lay claim to the name of Prime. But will they be able to save the universe from Primus's ambition? Only time will tell. Anyway, I went into Blender and got busy. I had a bit of a learning curve ahead of me, as this would be my most complex CAD creation to date. The tolerances of each moving part would be the trickiest bit for me. Too tight and the thing snaps. Too loose and it wouldn't work right. Not only that, but I'd be printing most of these in resin, which doesn't always come out 100% exactly as it should. It's a complex topic that other YouTube channels can explain far better than I can. The armatures, on the other hand, would be made in PLA, which has its own quirks. I grouped the components I'd be making into 4 groups. The shoulder backs, to replace the tank treads, a new set of wings, the backpack, and a face cover for the fusion cannon. First up were the shoulder backs, which were probably the least interesting of the bunch. They exist solely to replace the tank treads on the original and round off the shape of the shoulders. I measured the outline of the shoulders and the hole in which the mushroom peg goes, made a slab with a hole in it, and added a little nub that goes into this hole to keep it from wobbling about. Slightly more riveting is this piece that replaces the tread on the nose cone / fusion cannon. This covers up the head in alt mode and fills the empty space there since the tread doesn't do that anymore. I actually contemplated replacing this whole component since it's A, obscenely bulky, B, the fusion cannon role is fulfilled by the leaders, and really, its only purpose for being here is just to be half the alt mode. However, this project was already pretty big in scope for me, so I figured I'd make do with what the toy came with, and that idea went into the maybe later folder. Now we're getting to the good stuff. The wings on Tyrantron are these dinky little things that fold up and don't get too in the way in robot mode, and are easily replaced with these other components for the minor look. Miners! Now I know complaining about a jet transformer not being aerodynamic is a moot point, but come on, we can do better than this. Last night, Megatron, get out here and show them how it's done. Now that's a sci-fi jet. Yes, I decided to take some inspiration from TLK Megatron's alt mode. It's similarly long, with the wings stationed pretty far back on the jet, and the forward-swept wings look super aggressive. I decided to emulate this look, but with a much larger wingspan, and I designed it so the wings could fold down in robot mode and act like a cape of sorts, and they can still move out of the way if I need to move the arms outward. Then in jet mode, they unfold and bam! Look at that wingspan! I still think they are a little too small, not in span, but in their length. They seem like they may have too little surface area, but at the same time, it's a space jet. With space magic. And last but not least, the backpack. These are the leaders. They plug into these mounts on these armatures, which mount to these pieces glued to the back. These went through so many iterations it's not even funny. I had to constantly adjust where things were like pegs, adjust depths and thicknesses to account for resin shrinkage, round out the shapes, sandwich stuff between other stuff, you know how it is. The armatures were all printed in PLA, while the big things were all resin. On the final print, most of these parts are done with Sunlu ABS-like resin. The cannons themselves are printed in a translucent blue resin to emulate the look of the BotCon toy, but unfortunately they are a little prone to scratching. I may wind up just painting them too. After doing a final print of every piece, it was time to disassemble the toy and get crackin'. MMC did a run of extra Tyrantron bodies, so I didn't need to try and fix the hip of the old one. This also meant I had some extra parts to practice on, which was good for me, because I had so many issues with disassembly this time. In some areas, it's very easy, most of the parts are screwed together rather than using pins. But then the back of the torso has a couple of screw covers that are incredibly difficult to get off without destroying them, let alone notice the presence of, and I could not for the life of me get the calves apart. I cut one open to see what the problem was, and it turned out that this piece of shin armor is glued to it over where the joint is between the two halves. This made things a little more difficult, but not impossible. I just have to do more masking than I wanted to. Also, this pin on the fusion cannon was a bitch to get out. After the usual sanding, I primed everything with Mr. Color primers. Here, I did things a bit differently than usual. Normally, I just use a single primer color for everything, usually gray. A couple of times, I've left primer exposed as part of the color palette. This time though, I decided to use both white and black primer for the parts that would be those colors, and paint over them with the exact same colors. White was the first to go on, with any parts I couldn't separate being masked off if they were going to be black. I did the primer, then a coat of gloss white from the airbrush, and when that was all dry, I did the exact same with black. The tip of the fusion cannon was repainted into red as well, using Tamiya acrylic red. I was keeping the red plastic parts red anyway, so why not? Bright blue was used as an accent color, placed primarily in crevices and panel lines, which I had to freehand, and this wasn't always perfect. Some spots still have wayward blue pigment permanently baked into them now, but I suppose this could just be his Angalmoist power overflowing. With everything dry and his Deceptibrand on, I decided I'd go for a full gloss finish, again using Mr. Hobby clear coat. I ran out halfway and had to switch from the normal stuff to the kind that's supposed to protect against UV light, since that's all my local store had, and I wasn't willing to wait on a shipment. Fortunately, there's no difference in the finish, at least as far as I can tell, and this might actually be better for the resin-printed parts. And here he is, the Knight of Unicron. This mold is by no means perfect, nor is it the most dynamic. However, it has an incredible presence that's only compounded by the parts I added. And this bright, glossy color palette screams, I have the power of God and friendship on my side. I love the way this looks, and I'm super happy I got him done. There are, however, a couple more things that I want to resolve. Tyrantron comes with two heads, one based on the Matumti look, and one based on his appearance in Megatron Origin as a miner. I used the miner variant for this, and while it serves the purpose, I'd rather have one based on the OG SG Megatron's head, one with a more optimistic expression, and that sits a little more lifted from the torso. I began working on a new one in Blender, but so far, it's not ready for printing. I have the same sentiment towards the chest, but to a lesser extent. I'd also like to replicate this vent thing and add it to the other side. I should probably replicate one of the hip joints since one of them broke again and I had to do emergency surgery. And what else? Oh yeah, I need to reconsider the design of the backpack. The laws of physics have not looked favorably upon this project. Even without the cannons plugged in, this hinge is a bit loose and is prone to rotating down. Adding superglue to the joint before assembly helps, and I've actually used a glue remover solution to pry the parts apart, try and correct that, but it's not a perfect solution. In the end though, this is a badass figure of a badass character. I am super happy that I finally got this guy made and finished ahead of the cold weather. He looks amazing with MMC's SG Optimus and heck with regular Optimus. But there's only so much that one bot can do to protect the universe. If he wants to accomplish his mission, he's gonna need some friends. But that's a project for another day. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to go feed the ducks.